been feeling the inspiration being with you. I want to take a little bit of the time left, though, shift gears for a minute, because I had a really powerful experience with you yesterday. I want to unpack a little bit. And that was getting in the pool with you and receiving a Watsu session. And I'll share a little bit more about my experience in a minute, but I want to give you a chance first, just for people who've never heard of Watsu. What is Watsu?
Yeah, so Water Shiatsu or Watsu is something that developed back in the 1970s at Harbin Hot Springs. There was a guy named Harold Dull that had gone to train in Shiatsu in Japan, and he brought his training back and started using it in the pools in the mineral springs at Harbin Hot Springs, and found that it was just amazingly healing for people. And it developed into its own modality that's really spread worldwide, and there's lots of submodalities that have come out of it, and versions that are done on the surface of the water, and like water dance, like what we did, that's done underwater, and just an amazing variety of experiences. But the idea is to get the body into the water, into a neutral gravity situation, and move and let it unwind and be able to find the places that are holding and let them start to release. And there's actual physical release that comes with that. There's also emotional release that comes with that often, and it is a amazingly transformative kind of experience. It was very helpful for me in my own healing process, very transformative. And I've worked with hundreds of people since, finding that it's as healing for me to be able to share it as it is to receive it. And so I love both.
I loved it. It was as I said, I played around at Watsu pools, but I never had a session with I feel like you're a Watsu master, the way that the way you work with it, your technique and your attunement to my body and to your practice. It was really exquisite experience to be in the pool with you for the first time. I wish I lived less than 2,000 miles away
right.
so I could get back in the pool. It's almost worth a trip back just for this. Highly recommend people explore this modality. And yeah, but the Watsu, I also had water dance we did some underwater work, but I feel like this understanding too, we talked about men's work already today, and this emotional, I feel very supported with my emotional and spiritual growth by the gold mining group and by you in particular in the group. And it was a real blessing to feel this physical support and healing from you too. And I've taken a few of your yoga classes, and I got to take it today. I love your yoga too and core, but there's something really special about different than other healing experiences I've had of the Watsu. There's an intimacy to it because you're right up close, and it's closer than a massage. So there's a massage happening, but I'm being guided through the pool. So there's a sort of a way of, and I feel like a level of insight you got about where I was holding tension, my body, that you were able to tell me back and notice. You noticed from my walk too, or from other moments, but I felt like in my experience, you tuned into really what was going on in my body, and then used the low gravity effects of the water, to really help me release and help me stretch out in a way that I haven't been able to do out of the water. There was something unique about that I'm still kind of glowing from that experience. And particularly I've had lower back pain it's like you were noticing lumbars, and what were the muscles where you were noticed? Like, talk a little about how you helped me, I guess, in particular.
Well, so to kind of put it in context, we talked earlier about active listening as a skill. Well, touch is a way to active listen also, for your body to tell me what's going on. And that's very much what I employ. So, there's the words that you can tell me about what you're experiencing, and then there's what the body tells me about what you're experiencing. And a lot of times there's not necessarily an awareness connecting the two. So I can't tell you how many times I've worked with people who make no mention of something that's really significant that's going on in a shoulder or around their heart or in their neck or in a hip or a leg or, whatever it might be. And, we get to that, and I ask, okay, so what is this? And I had no idea that was there. It just, it just didn't occur to me. And so many times, like with so many other things, especially if they're painful, they get blocked out. And so just being able to bring awareness to that in a place where it can actually start to unwind and not need to guard as much is a really, really valuable thing. And that's what the Watsu does, in my experience, is it creates that space where I can hang out with someone, and sometimes it's just a matter of hanging out in stillness while they just start to unwind spontaneously. It has nothing to do with me guiding anything other than just making space for the unwinding to start happening. And other times it's a matter of, all right, let's go through progressively and see what's going on and be able to bring awareness to that for both of us.
How are you opening yourself during a Watsu session? You've done many of them, thousands of them, I would imagine by now. You talk about active listening. We're learning active listening techniques in men's group. And how are there techniques for listening to the body that you use, or is this something you've maybe got over decades of doing this? How has this developed for you, this noticing?
There's a very intuitive aspect of it that I've learned to listen to, but it's fairly easy to tell where someone's got something stuck in the body. So for example, when we were dealing with lumbar spine with you, and there was particular areas that had a lot going on, and it would be a matter of, all right, let me pull your ears up out of the water just a little bit and say, so what's going on with this? Is this what you were talking about in terms of the low back pain? And let's hang out with that. And which way does this want to open? And being able to play with it. Those are some of the kind of things that are part of the more active listening that I like to do in doing sessions. And as I work with people, that tends to become just more automatic that's going on. And there's a trust level that builds and so forth. A lot of people understandably are very reserved and sometimes very guarded going in to sessions when they're first starting. And there's that gradual releasing of that and just learning to flow with whatever the body wants to let go of.
I think letting go for me was easier because I had a trusting relationship with you. I already know you fairly well. And also I used my breath a lot to release. You noticed that after the session that right. For me, I'm also someone who can be, I'm working on my letting go of control, my surrendering to the moment is something that's an ongoing project for me in my life. So I had a little mantra I used.
You're not alone.
Yeah. I feel in community on that one with many others. And for me, I had a mantra of just breathing deeply and saying to myself, I surrender, I release, I let go. Something I've developed when I'm feeling like I want to close up. Because for me, being so close like that and being held, letting go and surrendering to you and your guidance in the water was its own healing practice to me around trust, around releasing. That itself was healing. So I'm not surprised to hear that just being held by you for people in the water can be enough sometimes. I appreciated all the extras. I'm glad there was more than that. And you took me, talk about, I'm a little curious to want to ask too about that second phase of what we did of the water dance where you took me underwater. Because that also was a trust exercise for me of trusting you to bring me down below the surface.
That I won't drown you?
That you won't drown me, yeah. Because
Right.
I had a nose, the first thing we just put for that section is to put a nose plug on. And so let's talk about that part of the water dance practice, because that was also really powerful for me.
The water dance for me was a practice of joy, because I instantly, when I had my first water dance, I felt like a baby dolphin, and like I could just be spun around and ride bow waves and do loops and twirls and things that I haven't had a chance to do since prior life as a dolphin, and from the perspective of trust, the fact that I would take you, at the top of a breath and take you underwater and move together and then be able to bring you back up so that you could breathe again, it does require a tremendous amount of trust to do that. And that's the biggest challenge for most people when they first start water dance, is just the trust that I'm not going to run out of air. Our bodies have capacities that we vastly underestimate. And so just having the faith that, oh, wait a minute, my head might be saying I'm going to drown, but, my body's fine. And just realizing that is really powerful in itself. And, that transition from just abject fear to, oh, I'm okay. That's a big deal. And especially for people, I've worked with people that have had near drowning experiences, and getting through that is a really important aspect.
Wow.
There's one of the movements in water dance that's called Embryo, where you literally take someone upside down in the water into a fetal position, just like an embryo. And I've had, people tell me that has been so healing of mother wound and other kinds of experiences of early childhood traumas that it is amazing to me what can happen in that kind of environment. And it's very spontaneous. And, I get to guide, I get to walk through that with you and, be part of the process, but it's not me doing the work. I just get to be channel and be present for it. It's just absolutely a beautiful thing to be present for.
Yeah, it's a beautiful experience that I recommend to others highly. And I also worked with that fear you were saying. You were talking about that fear and then trust of the body to take care of itself. That lung capacity piece was more comfortable for me because of cold exposure. Work I'm doing, I'm knowing that my body, when I'm in really cold water or ice baths, is going to be okay. It's going to heat itself up, that I'm not going to drown or pass out here. So it's this, your mind telling you, hey, it was telling me that, hey, I have this, my nose is plugged. I've been under the water 10, 20 seconds now. But I'm going to be fine. I can trust Kevin. I can trust my body to be fine for even much longer underwater, and it's safe. And that experiencing that tension for me is something I seek out in my life, of wanting to balance that, like some kind of physical threat or challenge, and then the breath and the awareness. I guess I can't breathe in this case, but the awareness that I can surrender and let go, my body will take care of itself, was a big part of that practice for me. And I also felt like a baby dolphin being swooshed around under the water like that. It was not like nothing I've really experienced being guided that way through the water and doing flips and doing all kinds of geometry down there was really a thrill. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And I might add, just for clarity of the listeners too, that water dance and Watsu are done in a pool that's right at skin temperature. So right at about 96 degrees, plus or minus a degree or two. So literally you can hang out in it all day long and not get too hot or too cold. So much better than being in a cold pool or in a hot tub or something like that, where there's, some kind of thermal gain or loss going on. In the Watsu pool, it's very specific to be able to create an environment that's almost womb-like in temperature, to be able to let the body start that unwinding process. Because if you're too cold or too hot, you're not going to be able to release.
Yeah, it's a very different experience. It's important to point out that comfort level I felt in the water because of the temperature. I think there's a very different process that the body's doing. I think with the cold exposure, I'm noticing I'm trying to keep my body. It's an active meditation of not keeping my body, staying relaxed, not letting my body fully close up, and just relaxing despite the stress. The stress for me in the Watsu and water dance is the stress of surrendering to another person, to surrendering my control over my body.
Right.
Very different than the ice, which also pushes me to want to control and want to get out of the water. So there's kind of a meta similarity, but I think the physiological experience is really underlying it is completely different. So I love that diversity, because I've been doing so much ice bathing lately to get this warm water version of surrender for me was beautiful. So thanks for that.
It's not an either or. It really is a both and. Both can be very viable modalities.
I love it. I love that this work now. Being here, doing this has been a blessing, and I'm realizing too the big picture connection. I'm appreciating in a way some of the things that you're subverting, both with the men's work you're doing and the water dance and yoga. A lot of the barriers I see causing a lot of our suffering in this world, my suffering of doing this alone, going through things alone, feeling lack of community, lack of some of these important skills that we learn in men's group that for men to speak up and to share their emotions, there's taboo around that we're breaking through, and to support each other this way and be together. There's also, I feel like, taboo around this kind of surrendering, and there's something you're breaking through around touch and sharing this in a pool, two men guiding each other this way. It feels like I feel so inspired to support this and to bring more of this into my life, because I feel like this is medicine that's being denied us as men and as human beings, that I think is unjust and pointless to deny ourselves these incredible healing modalities and spaces together. So thanks for being a champion of both of these and being out there in the world doing this.
Thank you. Well, from my perspective, the sharing of what's going on for us emotionally is a very healing thing. The sharing of what my soul is really asking for, that's showing up as my life's mission, is a really healing thing. And to be able to hear that from others, it helps to reinforce that sense of, oh, I'm okay with this. This is what I'm here for. And touch is a very healing thing. It can be misused. Any of these forms can be misused, and have been repeatedly, which is a lot of why there's so much taboo around it, and why there's so much reactivity around it. And, these are our pathways to be able to know ourselves and to be able to bring who we are into world while we're in form. That we get one shot at it this time around, to be able to realize who we are and bring that into form. And, these are all ways that I've found to do that more successfully.
It's working. It's working on me and others. I spoke to, around the Watsu, I spoke to a woman who got a session with you, and she talked about how healing that was to trust an older man to guide her, just to surrender. And there's so much, in the world now, that lack of trust, and for real reasons, of men aren't being trusted. And so to be a trustworthy man in the world, I really honor you for that. She talked about how that felt, just to say, because you get moved all around in a Watsu session or a water dance session. You have to let go and be held and be touched. And for me as a straight man to get over this like homophobic programming, I still feel like I have around being touched by another man, to be held this way, or to like receive a massage. That was healing for me, to say, that these are boundaries, that there's touch that men can share that's not sexual, that's platonic and healing. And that, and to receive that from you was healing for me too, to be like, I feel like so many men, and I was closed off from touch from both men and women, that for me, touch was limited to partnership, is where I would get all my touch needs met.
All sexual.
It's all sexual. And I believe that our needs for touch are much more complex and varied and expansive than just the sexual touch we get in a sexual relationship.
Right.
And so there's so many flavors and variants of that. And so for her and for me, the woman who you gave a Watsu session to, or for me, it's healing some of this conditioning and trauma that I think is really not serving us in my individual case and in the world right now, to be in our bodies, for our nervous systems to ground, to relax with each other. So I think just like another round of blessings for you again for
Thank you
for that. So you're doing a good job receiving all that.
Hitting the nail on the head, because culturally, touch gets associated with sex.
Yes.
And that is the farthest thing from the truth, because yes, there is sexual touch, but touch is of the senses. It is by nature sensual, and that is something that's why babies who get touched by their mothers are inherently healthier than babies that don't. We have that programming from the beginning, and that's true of all animals. We need that contact. We need to be connected with each other as physical beings, because that's what we are, and to be able to do that in a good way. And that's a really important aspect of the practice, as far as I'm concerned, to be able to start to make those kind of distinctions and have the experience that reinforces the positive aspect of that.